Tim Allison, and I'm the guy who's going to make sure that Lois Capps' vote isn't canceled out each and every time. I'm running against Elton Gallegly, who has been in office for 24 long years. And this has been a long, long campaign. About a year and a half in the making at this point. But during the course of the campaign, one of the things that's been fun for me is just collecting the stories. And there are so many things that in this campaign I will never forget. In Moore Park, California, knocking on a door and having this 83-year-old gentleman by the name of Oscar pull me over. You know, he's in the garage, and I say, "Hello, anybody here?" And I hear this voice from the garage. The garage door is open. He says, "Who wants to know?" You know? And he's over there with his son and his son-in-law. And he pulls me over, and he obviously reads the paper and knows a lot about politics, because as soon as I introduced myself, he knew who I was running against. He knew about the other races in the area. And I knew from my list he was a registered Democrat, so I thought I'd have a pretty receptive crowd, despite his initial brusque introduction. Turns out he's a sweetheart of a guy. And his son and son-in-law are there, and he said, "Well, I don't tell them who they should vote for." I said, I kind of keep things to myself. We talked about the issues, and I said, "You know, how long have you been in this house?" He said, "Since the 1960s. I said, "Okay, as a candidate, I'm here at your door. How many times has the incumbent been to your door?" He's been in office for 24 years. He said, "He's never been to my door. No politician's ever been to my door." And he said, "In fact, I've been reading in the paper, and it said in the paper that you've now knocked on thousands of doors across the district. But when I read that, I turned to my son and said, 'He's never been to our door.'" And he said, "And now you have." And he said, "I usually keep my politics to myself, but I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to tell everybody that you took the time, you cared, you came to my door to find out what issues were of concern to me." And this proud, strong man who had just been working on a car, 83 years old, starts talking to me, and his voice chokes up. And he says, "You know, I'm not so worried about my son's generation." He said, they'll be fine. What about his kids? What's happening in this country? What are we doing in Washington and in Sacramento? It's no longer about the quality of the ideas. It's about who proposes them. Because if it's a Democrat idea, the Republicans have a knee-jerk reaction opposing it. And if it's a Republican idea, the Democrats do the same thing. At what point are they going to start doing the people's business? At what point are they going to start taking care of folks like me, like my kids, like my grandkids? And I turned to him at that moment and I said, "I'm deputizing you. You're on the campaign trail." Because that's what I've been trying to communicate on the trail. That's what I've been trying to tell people, that we need to get beyond the partisan politics of the finger pointing and the blame game in Washington, and try to get back to this idea that it's a public service, that when you're in public office, you're there to try to make people's lives better. And so I've got a new campaign person. He's going door to door. He's talking to his friends and he's talking to his neighbors. And despite the fact that he said he doesn't share his politics, he doesn't talk, he's certainly going to share his politics about me. And that's what I've been trying to do as I go door to door and talk to people. Still to this day, my favorite, absolute favorite door is the household in Simi Valley. When I went up to the door, most conservative part of the district, went up to the door and I introduced myself. I said, "Hi, I'm Tim Allison. I'm running for Congress. I'm hoping to represent you in Washington, D.C. The gentleman kind of looked. He said, "Oh, right here at my door. Cool." And then he says, "Republican or Democrat?" And I kind of had a suspicion, because whatever the one they say first is usually what they are. And I said, "Well, I'm on the Democratic side of the aisle, but I've got a lot of support from both sides." And that wasn't, he didn't even listen to that part. He just turned to me and he said, "Obama, your mama, get the H off my porch." and he wasn't even that polite. He didn't just say H. And I looked at him and I don't know what, no kids are listening, but I don't know what Obama, your mama means. But I turned to him and I said, "Well, I take it you're on the Republican side of the aisle, but that's okay. I've got support from both sides." And he kind of went into this. I mean, that was enough to get him talking. And he said, you know, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated with what's going on in Washington, D.C. I'm frustrated with Barack Obama, but George Bush was even worse. He said, these folks in D.C., they don't get it. You know, we're just trying to get by here. He said, you know, I've got this problem with Medicare. I'm missing these 3 teeth. And he shows me, and yes, indeed, he's missing 3 teeth. And he said, I'm frustrated because Medicare, they don't even bother returning my phone calls. He said, I've got private insurance, and that's supposed to be covering things, and they don't. And he said, I'm Republican, but I just, you know, a pox on all their houses. And I turned to him and I said, you know, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected, it doesn't matter to me whether you voted for me or not, although I prefer you did. It doesn't matter to me whether you're Republican or Democrat, Libertarian or Green, as opposed to Jeff Green Party. It's constituent service. I'll take up the fight on your behalf. And I fully expect the day after I get elected for you to give me a call and remind me of this conversation, because I want to fight for you. I'm going to try to fight to make sure Medicare takes your concerns seriously and you are well represented, because that's what a public servant is supposed to do. And that's my pledge to you. I said, you should call your member of Congress. I hear across this district people saying that he's been in office 24 years. At this point, his staff doesn't even return people's phone calls. I said it's worth a try, because he's supposed to be doing that on your behalf. But if I'm fortunate enough to get elected, it'll be the hallmark of my time in office, strong constituent service. The guy softened a little bit, and then he said, what about small businesses? I said, I'm a small business person. My parents, and during the course of their great careers, were educators, but they also had 2 businesses. They had a sporting goods store and a hotel. I understand the needs of small businesses. I understand how hard it is to put those kind of hours into a business. And I believe that small businesses are the economic engine of our society. That's how we get out of a recession. Targeted tax breaks so that they start hiring again. So they start investing in their business. This whole thing was about a 4.5-minute conversation. It started with, Obama, your mama, get the H off my porch, and ended with him saying, well, it's my son's house, but we'd be happy to have you put your sign up front. If I had the ability to talk to all 400,000 registered voters in the district, this election, we'd win hands down. If only because my opponent isn't doing it. Let me tell you something about Mr. Gallegly. For the first time in about 15 years, at least that anybody can remember, nobody's quite sure, he's knocking on doors and walking precincts. In Simi Valley, he's knocking on doors because he's worried about his support and he feels like he needs to shore it up. We have more lawn signs up in Simi Valley. According to Brian Dennard, he says we have more lawn signs up in Simi Valley than any Democrats had in decades. We are working this door to door, precinct to precinct, city to city across the district. And the momentum's going in our favor. We have an opportunity in this election. You know, we looked at this a long time ago. We realized that the numbers were trending in our favor. For each year that Elton Gallegly has been reelected, his margin has shrunk.